When I started looking at some of my clients that are just so doggone happy, and some of my clients that are in their 80s and 90s and who are loving life, as compared to some of my clients that are in their 60s and 70s, not so much. And when I started looking at it, I saw several clues that really shed light on what people who have really happy, fulfilled lives are doing differently. Hi, I'm Annette Bau, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. Today's free resource is our retirement plan checklist. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/RPC. One of the things that I find about clients that are happy is they have a retirement plan and they think through the different scenarios to make sure they don't have to worry about what ifs. So this free resource is going to help you immensely just to take a look at where you are. How prepared are you? Are there gaps? Are there areas that you need to address? Again, themillionaireinsider.com/RPC. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/104. All materials and intellectual property are copywritten by themillionaireseries.com. The information is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement, planning, or healthcare advice. Today, we're diving into 3 secrets of happy clients. It's things that I have seen over and over again, and with a goal of helping you create a happier life now as well as in retirement. So let's dive in. The first and possibly most important is your health. And I know everyone says, oh yeah, health's important, but what we got to do is we got to make sure we are taking the necessary steps right now to ensure we're going to have optimal health. So the first thing is sleep. And the recommendations are 7 to 8.5 hours of sleep a night. I encourage you to consider wearing an Oura ring. I got my Oura ring and I love it. In fact, it just gives you so much data, so much helpful insight. You put an app for like $70 a year, which I think is money well spent. You can actually put an app on your phone and it tells you your readiness score. Now, I got to bed a little bit late last night, so it's an 81, but my sleep is an 86. Could have gotten a little bit more sleep, but I love the fact that it says I got an hour and 49 minutes of REM, which was 29%, deep sleep, an hour and 15 minutes, 20%. All of my efficiency was 87. My sleep, I try to aim for 7 to 8, and I almost always get that. Last night it was 6 hours and 16 minutes. So that is why I got the 86. And then activity. Now, activity, I do 10,000 steps a day. I've already done 10,517. But it wants you to stay active, move every hour, training frequency, meeting your goals, volume. Now, this is one thing that's really important. I've burnt 2,000 calories already today. Now, the key here is I did 2 workouts today. Me and my husband went to an 8:15, really hardcore lifting. And then we went to the 9:30, which is more micro muscles. And I can totally feel it already. My stomach, my shoulders, my back. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a little sore tomorrow. But this is one thing that's been very helpful. So it gives you a heart rate, but it also gives you this sleeping beats per minute. And what I find is that if I go to bed relaxed, it's a lot better than when I don't, which makes sense. But if I watch something like scary, my lowest heart rate, which they want it to be early in the evening and then go back up, is high, and then it comes down and then goes back up. And that's not optimal. So a lot of times that's where I get a bad score in my recovery index. It's just pay attention. So it gives you areas where you need to pay attention. I absolutely love my Oura ring, and I encourage you to consider it. You want to turn off electronics 60 to 90 minutes before you go to bed. Now, if you're like me and you get this like second wind at about 9 or 10 o'clock, One of the things that I do, my goal is to be in bed at 9:30. That doesn't typically happen. Now, my Aura Ring, which measures everything, said they want me in bed between 10 and 11. That's my optimal spot. And I'm sure some of it is because I don't typically get to bed at 9:30. But one of the things that I do, because I have a tendency of, oh, you got your phone, if you're watching a TV show, we don't do that during the week, but on the weekends we do. What I do is I have a evening ritual and a routine that basically takes about 30 to 45 minutes. And then sometimes I take a bath, which adds on another 15. That's how I get my time to wind down and not have electronics before I go to bed. You ideally want to sleep in a cool environment. We now sleep at about 68 degrees. And now that we're used to it, when we don't, I wake up and I'm really hot. It was really hard for me because I don't like to be cold, but it's been so helpful in getting a good night's sleep. You want to drink 50% of your body weight in ounces of water a day. So if you weigh 120 pounds, you're going to drink 60 ounces. If you weigh 150 pounds, you're going to drink 75 ounces. Now, I recommend that you drink your water before dinner. So you have all your ounces drank and then stop drinking. So you don't have to wake up and go to the restroom. That's what disturbs a lot of people's sleep. Now, this is also critical. If you, as you get older, all gravity pushes everything down, and that also causes our bladder to shrink. I encourage you to consider getting a slant board. You don't have to buy one. I have one that you sit on and then it flips up. But I also have one that I got years ago that lays on the ground. Both of those are expensive. You can just make one with an ironing board. Now, be really careful. But before I had money, that's what I used was an ironing board, because my chiropractor said, after I had my baby, my first child, you've got to be giving your organs a breather, and you want gravity to pull it back. I find that helps a lot with not waking up, having to use the restroom. Now, if you get really hungry after dinner, I encourage you to have a cup of herbal tea. Now, what I do is I'll have a really small one, just again, so it does not cause any problems in my sleep. But a lot of times if you drink like a nighty night or a caramel night or one of those that are so good, and you just have a little bit of it before you go to bed, it helps relax you. You can even use some lavender or some different oils you can just put right on your nostrils that really can calm you down. All those things are important. I like to do a lavender Epsom bath before I go to bed. Now, if you have a rough night's sleep, I encourage you to take a nap. Now, as I mentioned, I didn't get as much sleep last night as I typically do. And then we did a double workout. We both came home today after working out, and we took almost a 2-hour nap. So taking a nap is not a problem. I know people who do it regularly. Obviously, I can't because I'm at my office. But I encourage you, if you don't get a good night's sleep, make sleep a priority. The one thing I've seen with my happy clients is they make sleep a priority. It's amazing. All right, the next thing is diet. You want to eat lean, grass-fed protein, non-starchy organic vegetables, healthy fats such as olive or avocado oil, avocados. Now, I don't care how much avocados are. We have it in our budget to buy avocados. Now, I said we can just drive down to Mexico and get some, but you really can't bring them across the border. We live on avocados. And so, gosh, no matter how much avocados are, we are going to have in our budget to buy avocados. Flax and basil seeds are good. Now, a lot of people say chia seeds, and that is true. However, there is an inflammatory indicator in those, which means it raises your inflammation. That's why a lot of people have turned to basil seeds. Coconut oil is good, but it hardens in your arteries. So a better option is MCT oil because it doesn't harden. Nuts can be good, especially pistachios, walnuts, pecans, and macadamia. Now, a lot of experts will say, avoid peanuts because they have a carcinogen in them, a cancer-producing element. Cashews aren't as good, and some of the other ones aren't. So again, just do your own research, but that's what I have found in my 30 years of studying some of the top medical experts. All right, number 3, exercise. I encourage you to consider daily yoga. Now, do my clients all do it? No, but what they do is they stretch. So some of them do yoga, some of them don't. Make sure that you're either doing daily yoga or stretching. Now, the reason I like daily yoga is because what I find is that yoga is not only physical, but it's also mental. And it really is designed to help you quiet your brain down. Every morning, I do about 20 minutes of restorative yin, and that's where you hold the position for 3 to 5 minutes. And then I do 20 minutes of kundalini, where I do breath work. And then I do 20 minutes of shavasana, where I just really relax. And the reason you always want to end your practice with shavasana is because the belief is it helps you integrate your yoga practice into the real world. So you're not just going from this really relaxed state into chaos. You've got that transition. There is some experts who believe that doing kundalini, where you're doing it with somebody that's not qualified or you don't know what you're doing, can actually lead to depression and even suicide. So be really careful. You always want to begin any practice, whether it is physical or whether it is diet or anything related to your health or mindset, with somebody qualified. I personally find that a longer shavasana, where you're integrating more your practice into your life before you go out into the world, is really powerful. But again, always check with a qualified expert. That would be a yogi who is qualified in Kundalini yoga, and they're all over. You just have to search for them. And then cardio. I focus on 10,000 steps a day. As I mentioned, I'm already over 10,000. But that is my goal. And then weight training 3 times a week. And I mean, I'm stronger than I have been my entire life. In fact, I'm so proud. I am really strong and I just feel so good. And as I mentioned this morning, the workout, God, my back, she did so much on the back and then on the shoulders, can be so hard, but that is so powerful. Always, always check with a qualified healthcare provider on matters that impact your health or mindset. All right, number 2, simplify your life and routine. Why do so few people achieve their goals, including their money goals? What is the common denominator of success? You can say, oh, there's a lot of things and we could debate them, but the one thing I know for sure is that people who are successful get used to boring and mundane. We know that there is so much boring and mundane in what we do and what we have to do, and it is amazing. The ability to learn how to adapt to doing boring things or things that you're doing over and over again, and how impactful that is to the results you get. So much of life is boring and mundane. And you have to remember, we're fighting that dopamine, adrenaline, silver bullet, which is so exciting. And especially for those of us that are entrepreneurs and probably a little ADHD, it's so fun. As many of you know, I've made a major change. I'm really focusing in on working with pre-retirees and retirees and laser focusing in on that, because that's where I feel I can make the biggest impact on people's lives. And it's where I think instead of sitting and worrying about people that aren't going to have enough money, I can be doing something about it. That's requiring me to really dial in on a lot of things I'm doing right now that I have to give up. And so everything you say yes to or no to, you got to be really present on it. The problem with dopamine and adrenaline is it can wreak havoc on even the best laid plan. So we've got to make sure we're not letting that run our lives. Some great questions to start with. What's one thing you could do right now that would simplify your life? It might be meal prepping. It might be hiring a cleaner. It might be having somebody do your yard work. But what's one thing? What can you remove from your plate? What can you say no to? And what can you delegate? You know, the power of saying no, in my opinion, is so important. And as Warren Buffett said, he said, successful people know how to say no. Extraordinarily successful people almost always say no the majority of the time because they know where their focus is. They know what they want to do. They're not saying yes to other things. That is such a powerful lesson. All right, number 3, they create passive or residual income streams. I cannot stress to you, my friend, the power of having money come into your account every single month. Kind of like your check, only you don't have to work and you still get it. Now, one of the best and most important strategies to help you stop worrying about money is to create these income streams. This is so important and so many people miss it. Now, if you don't have income streams, I encourage you to go download our residual income guide. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/RIG. But the residual income guide really walks you through concepts to understand it from a bigger picture, and then to start looking at ways in which you can create either passive or residual income. As a recap, passive income is where like you put a lump sum amount of money, say like in an annuity, and then it pays you every month. Residual is where you do work and then you get it. So example of real estate, like you might invest some money in real estate, you get it paid off and then you start making money on it. So you did work to create that income stream as compared to just giving somebody money and then creating it. Now, some people can't do the guaranteed income. That's my absolute favorite. But if you don't have a lump sum amount, you got a problem. Now, some companies allow you to put money in every year. That is going to give you some growth, meaning you're going to have some upside, but also protection on the downside. But it's not what I'm talking about where I say guaranteed income, because you're getting money and then you still have to convert that into a product that will pay you guaranteed income. So don't get confused on that. A lot of people get confused and they're like, oh yeah, I've got that. You may have, if you have one that's more growth oriented, it is not an income annuity. I personally like guaranteed income annuities. So again, you got to look at your situation, what's applicable to you, but just be aware of that. That resource is going to give you some insight. Again, you can access it at themillionaireinsider.com/RIG. In my 35 years, I've seen ups and downs, sideways, everything in between with the market, whether it's bond market, stock market, real estate market. But one thing that is proven over and over again with the happiest people is they're not worried about money. And it's not about just having enough, because most of my clients have enough. It's having that consistent income every single month. They're not worried about it. It's not subject to interest rates. It's not subject to swings in the stock market, in the bond market, in the world economy, nothing. That, my friends, is powerful. Now, what are options? All right, pension is, in my opinion, one of the best options. If you have a pension, you should look up to the heavens and rejoice. Many of the old pensions actually paid more than a person was making in their career. I mean, how could you not be happy? I mean, you get to quit your job and do nothing, and you make more money than you did when you were working. Social Security, again, if you have Social Security or you're pretty close to retirement, be thankful that you have it. And I encourage everyone that's listening to this to call your congressman and your senators and tell them not to touch Medicare or Social Security. I say this over and over again. No politician that wants to get elected is going to say they're going to touch Social Security. But right now, there's problems with not taxing tips, overtime, or Social Security for affluent clients, all of those funded. And then immigration is going to impact it by people who are paying into the system and will never get it out. So those are things that impact all of us that have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars into Social Security. And it's important that you let your congressmen and senators know how important it is and that you expect them to keep Social Security so that you've got it in retirement. And then also Medicare. They're doing a lot of things with Medicare. If you make too much money and either you or your partner are already taking Social Security, you know that Medicare, they are putting a surcharge on that. It is unbelievable. I have several clients who are paying $500, $600, $700, $800 a month more for their Medicare. One couple they're paying basically $2,000 a month, $1,000 more for each one of them because of the amount of money they make. So you got to be aware of that. You got to pay attention. A lot of people don't know that until they get in the pickle. And then they're like, wow, I wish I would have known that. And that's why it's really important that when you do your plan, you set up your tax plan along with your retirement plan so you can make sure and plan for those things and you don't fall into that situation. Dividend stocks are another option. Now, the issue with dividend stocks is they're not guaranteed. They are a form of residual income, passive income, but you have to understand they're not guaranteed. Mutual funds that target a payout. There are some that target a 5% payout, a 7% payout, a lot of those types of products, but again, they're not guaranteed. So you've got to make sure that you've got sources that are going to meet you where you are. If you have some of that, you still may want to have some additional guaranteed income. Real estate can be an option. A lot of people have made a lot of money in rentals. Now, commercial real estate has been really hit. But again, you got to look at what works for you. And now that people are going back to work, and a lot of companies are really focused on that, thinking they have a more productive workforce if they're in an office versus at home, that could be shifting. But again, you got to just look at your situation, make sure whatever you invest in or getting money from works for you based on your risk tolerance, meaning how much risk you can handle, as well as potential volatility in that market. Like if you don't have it rented out, what are you going to do? And then the last one, which I love, and I call it your personal pension, it is guaranteed income through an annuity. And this is something that is absolutely critical, in my opinion. You create what I refer to as this personal pension with a tax coordinated plan. I have seen so many mistakes because what people are not doing is they're not looking at your current marginal and effective tax rate, what you're doing right now, what's happening right now, as well as what's going to happen in retirement. And I can't tell you how many situations where somebody says, well, my CPA says that I'm going to have less money in retirement. And I'm like, okay, well, we got to look at that. And then when we start running the numbers, they're actually going to be in a higher tax bracket because of the way they have their income structured from their guaranteed income as well as their passive and residual income. So you've got to be really clear on that. And you also want to be careful because you want to look and say, okay, what should be in vehicles that are going to generate ordinary income tax versus ones that are going to generate capital gains tax. And I find it fascinating. It took me 30 years to figure this out. I have never heard another advisor talking about this. And I just find it fascinating. I started looking at it. I started saying, wait a minute, if we have this income here versus here, it's going to double our taxes. So you got to be aware of that because a lot of people aren't. And I just recently spoke with somebody and I was listening to them and I started asking them questions. I'm like, they are not even taking into account taxes. You want to make sure you are. And what you want to do is once you look at your current marginal as well as effective tax rate, as well as the projected one in retirement, you then want to look at income from all sources, including required RMD, which is required minimum distribution. It's the amount of money you have to take out of your pension, your IRAs, your 401k. Many people purchase annuities without this analysis. And it, as I mentioned, it pushes them into a higher tax bracket. Again, always check with a qualified advisor. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/SR to talk with somebody about your situation. So there you have it. So let's recap. Number one, you've got to make health a priority. That includes getting adequate sleep, drinking enough water, 50% of your body weight in ounces of water, not drinking right before you go to bed so you don't wake up and have to use the restroom, eating really healthy, making sure that you're eating lean, grass-fed protein, as well as non-starchy vegetables and healthy fat. And then if you can eat carbs because you don't have blood sugar issues, make sure they're long-term carbs, that they don't break down into your blood sugar as quickly. And then exercise. You want to be looking at how many steps you're getting a day. I just think 10,000 is a magic number. You also want to be stretching every day, ideally doing some yoga, and then also weight training, ideally 3 times a week. I was doing it 4 times a week. It was just too much. Now, as I mentioned, doing 2 classes in one day might be too much too, since I can already feel it in my stomach and my back. But again, you just got to make health a priority. 2, you got to simplify your life and your routine. What can you get off your plate? What can you delegate? What can you say no to? Start looking at those things, my friends. That is what people who are happy do differently. And then 3, create those passive and residual income streams. There are a lot of options. In fact, if you download the guide, themillionaireinsider.com/RIG, which we just updated, you're going to see a lot of options in there that you can consider. Now, some of them are more residual and some of them are not guaranteed. So again, always look at it from a perspective of, are you like me and you like knowing certainty that you've got X amount of dollars? I don't need guaranteed on everything, but I love knowing that I have this much money coming in every month, no matter what. And then the excess that I make, I can have that, but I don't have to. I'm not relying on that. You got to look for yourself. And again, working with a qualified advisor who can really help you look at your situation and determine what works for you is the key. If you do have questions or you do need support, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/SR. So there you have it. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. I just thought it was really interesting when I started looking at some of my clients that are just so doggone happy, and some of my clients that are in their 80s and 90s and who are loving life as compared to some of my clients that are in their 60s and 70s, not so much. And when I started looking at it, I saw several clues that really shed light on what people who have really happy, fulfilled lives are doing differently. So I hope this helps you. Even if you incorporate a couple things or you start working towards this, my friend, that is the key. I'm Annette Bao, all international copyrights are reserved. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.